Thule was 7630 north. We had no alternates, and this was in the wintertime. And during the wintertime, from November in through January to February, in that area, it's dark 24 hours a day. There's not a glimmer of light at any time during the whole day and night. And we were on alert. And Thule was critical. We were in charge of course, security of that location. And at that time, the big threat was Russia over the pole. So we had aircraft on alert all the time. And if anything, showed up unknown or whatever, we would scramble and go out and identify it. And if possible, and in fact, at Thule, we had the authority, if it was considered a threat, and we scrambled on it and verified that, if it did evasion or had enemy markings or anything that was suspicious, we had the authority to engage and shoot it down. Now, I've never had that kind of authority to engagement anywhere else, but Thule was way north, and at that time, communications were very, very primitive. And the fact is, by the time we would get to that target, the unknown, and identify or go through that much of it, he would be so close to the base that, and we had tankers there on standby. But the biggest thing was we had BMUS. BMUS was a ballistic early warning missile site, and it was designed to look over the horizon and pick up if a missile was launched to get the plume and so on. It gave us our 15 to 20 minutes of warning prior to impact if they did do that. So it was very, very critical to be able to identify that and get that time. Plus, to have those tankers available if we launched against Russia and to also refuel them coming back. So that thing was critical. So there was just no time for any kind of... St. John's, Newfoundland was our headquarters. And you just couldn't do it. We had local stuff there, but it had no more authority than we did. And being there and looking, obviously, we were in a better position to make that call. We never had to do it, at least, no, we didn't. But the threat was always real, and the fact that we had that authority, I just never have had that kind of authority to be able to take action and shoot something down before, and nor since, really. So it was kind of interesting, but anyway, to get back what you were saying, I got digressed just a little bit to show the hostility in the environment. We had no alternate. When we took off, there was no airport that we could physically fly to or navigate to recover. So if the weather went bad, if other things happened at Thule where we could not land for any reason, we were done. We had either bail out or find a crash landing site or something, which we couldn't do. It was dark. And the terrain, it was just impossible. Basically, we had no alternates. So we would take off. Now, it was critical, and normally, no big deal, but weather would come down. And it would be down below or down near our minimums for actual normal landing. And this one night, I'm on alert, and we used to go by number 1 or 2. If it was considered a high-speed, high-threat type, we launched 2. If it was considered more of a routine, an airline or something, maybe wandered through the area that we wanted to check out, we just launched 1, with the other being brought back up for a hot 5 in case they needed it. So anyway, it was that night. We're on alert. I'm number 1 do it, and we do it by midnight. Midnight, if it goes off before midnight, you take number 1. If it's after that, the other. So you never had to worry who was going to be leading on this thing. So anyway, I wind up being number 1 on the thing. The horn goes off for scramble. Now, we're on mandatory. The weather is below South and North Mountain. We have maybe 300 feet, 400 feet of visibility or actual height from the snow and cloud deck. It wasn't heavy snow or whatever. It was kind of a misty, light type stuff. So anyway, the horn went off and I taxied out. Now, you got 2 things going here. If it's a hot one, you taxi out and call for scrambled instructions. If he gives them, you're going. He can tell you your first heading, climb at gate or buster, which is afterburner or just normal climb rate, give you the radio frequency and anything else that might be pertinent to your initial takeoff and instructions what to do. And so anyway, normally they'll put you on what they call Type 5. If there's any doubt, they don't want to scramble you under those conditions because, again, you may not get back. You may be expendable, and they don't want to do that unless it's absolutely necessary, but they will. So I'm taxiing out expecting them to put me on Type 5. He gives me the scramble instruction. Woo, it's getting serious. So anyway, taxi on the runway, scramble instructions, and I bang and go. Number 2, of course, here's the same thing, and he's going to follow at a certain interval. So I get airborne, and I'm told to take off and gate climb to whatever the altitude was. Gave me the initial heading and a frequency to go to for tactical, the radar site. So I take off, and I go up on this thing, got everything cleaned up, and then I change over the radio to the frequency he gave me, and I do the turn, and I call, nothing. It's dead. I cannot hear anybody or anything. So it's not uncommon to have radio problems, but usually you have what they call guard, which is an emergency frequency, and you can just flip to that, and that's independent. So I call on guard, nothing. I go back to the original again. I try some other frequency, nothing. So my radio's out. I just accept the fact that I have lost my radio. So I got a wingman, and I figure, well, I'll get out of his way and let him go ahead and take the mission. So I turn out of the way into kind of a clear area and go into a holding pattern. And I'm going to come back to Thule. I'm obviously not going to be able to do anything else. And at that time, our navigation radio was TACAN, Tactical Air Radio. And it had peculiarity. It had a stroboscopic search. You had like 2 antennas. One searched at 35 RPM. And then we had another one which was superimposed at 135. 15 and 135. Anyway, what it did, the first one put you in an 8-degree bend. So it would come around and it would then lock on at the first bend that was there that it could identify. And there were 8 of them, so it would lock on to that. And then the second one would do the same thing, only it would then fine-tune the 35 cycle with the 135 and gave you 9 times more accuracy than VOR. But the thing is, as that searched, that first one should pick up the first bend that's open and then tune in that. Well, if it was distorted for any reason where it could not recognize the right bend, it would skip to the next one. And whatever, so you could have errors of 40 or multiples of 40 error, in your transmission data and what you received. So you had to be very, very careful that you were on the right one, or you could wander off into who knows what. And without being to talk to anybody, that wasn't good at all. So anyway, I just stacked it aside, and I tuned in this station there, and it was offset. It wasn't right on the field. It was on South Mountain. But that's still good. It still gives you a reference. What you want is a known point to work from. And you could see the light refracting up through the ice crystals and stuff. So I just kind of anchored around that. I knew it was the VOR station. I knew the base was there, and I'm just biding time. I got fuel, and this guy is on a mission. It might be something really, really serious. And the last thing I need to do is create another problem for anybody. So I figured I'll just burn off fuel. I'll double check my navigation to make sure all my equipment is giving me the correct data. And I will set up my own approach pattern. I'll do a teardrop off a known point, go out, come back, and then tune in my ILS, which was offset from the TACAN station, and I will fly an approach and land. I wasn't even concerned about it. It was just one of the things. I knew there was enough ceiling I could land. So I go through this thing, and I sit there for a while and go through the drill, and, well, finally things settle down. I figure, well, they got enough time to get everything sorted out. So I'll just go ahead and set up one pattern, and I'll squawk emergency to let them know it's not a normal approach. So I turn it on, and I set up my teardrop and come back in and made a chair back, pick up the ILS, and I'm flying to the runway. And the visibility might be 3/4 of a mile or so, and I pick up the red lights, on the edge of the runway, and there it is. I'm lined up, and I'm getting ready to land, and by the time all of a sudden, a bright flash of light ahead of me. I thought, what is going on here? I mean, that's the thing I need. I want to land there, and all of a sudden, so I stack off to the side, I know what's going on, and there's a 102 on the runway. And I thought they're going to scramble somebody to bring me up. And then I look again, and there's a drag chute. Well, obviously I can't land. He's on the runway, and he's got the chute out, and that really puzzles me. And then I got to think, well, they were going to come up, and when they saw me, they just aborted and let me come back in my own run. I didn't know. I really didn't know. But I'm a little ticked that I have to make the approach. And there's not enough room to do a 360 or even out in that area. So I had to make like a 90-270 procedure turn to get some lateral and back through, track the ILS back out again, and did another procedure turn, come in and landed. And it wasn't, any big deal. I went over and taxied off the end of the runway to the operation area, where the alert hangar was. And as I approached there, all kinds of stuff there. There's armored vehicle there, SAC owned the base, They had an armored vehicle there with guns. They had soldiers or MPs, I don't know what they were, milling all around with guns. And I look, and so anyway, they motioned me to come in to park it. So I come in, they put a ladder up, and I open the lid, and guy comes running up the ladder. He says, what happened? I said, I lost my radio. I mean, it's simple as that. They just said, what is that? You lost your radio? You know what the odds of this? And he goes through some gyrate. I said, buddy, I don't have a clue what you're talking about. You went to say, he said, I'm impounding this airplane. I said, it's yours. And I got out of the airplane. I still don't know what's going on. So I walked down across the ramp, with all my Arctic gear, and I look up, there's my wingman, Bob Elliott. What is going on, Bob? I don't understand any of this. And he said, well, I could explain some of it. And he goes through the job. What had happened, he had exactly the same failure on his airplane following me and didn't know what was going on. Did exactly the same thing, burned out some fuel, did some patterns, verified the orientation of the radios and so forth like that. He set up a teardrop pattern just like I did. He comes in, and what I saw in that right light was him flaring on the snow. We were about 3/4 of a mile apart, didn't know it. That's close, and that would have been dead without even knowing you were dying. So, and to this day, I don't know what happened, but those radios were notorious for failing. The ARC-34s, they just weren't reliable, the old tube type.
Why did the guy want to impound the airplane?
Well, they thought it was sabotage. He said, this is sabotage. See, two coincidences, like the SAC gets involved, and all these guys. And, we had problems up there. Like I told you early on, I think I mentioned about Moscow, Mali. So people were there that were gathering information and watching us. And the Danish government owned it, but they had a radio station there and stuff. So one never knew. We never did figure that out. But he was taking the worst, scenario, that somebody was basically sabotaging this whole operation. So maybe he was, I don't know, but we never found out.